Tonight's Big Picture Rumble are Charles Sauer, economist and policy specialist and president of at the Market Institute, Ari Ravenhoft, host of The Agenda, airing 6 to 9 a.m. weekdays on Sirius Progress 127, and author of the upcoming book Lies Incorporated, The World of Post-Truth Politics, and Horace Cooper, attorney and senior fellow at the National Center for Public Policy Research. And thank you all for joining me.
Thanks. Thank you.
Let's get to it. So, I set the question up, I guess, how do we call ourselves a democracy when we've got invisible money that we will never know where it came from paying for our candidates?
Well, I think it's really easy, and despite the long introduction to confuse people on the way in, let's really just shorten this down. In fact, the dark money that you're talking about is for a candidate that didn't win. That's how a democracy works. If you're mad about this money, the candidate didn't win, so the money didn't do anything. But the studies have always shown that the money in politics doesn't affect it. We have Bernie Sanders is raising.
Then why are the Koch brothers raising and spending $900 million if it doesn't do any good?
Well, you tell me, because if you look at the candidates that they supposedly supported, those candidates didn't do good. So I would say that they aren't raising it for anything.
So your definition of a democracy is billionaires, without ever identifying themselves, using money to buy political candidates.
Well, I learned today that the guy from the Market Institute seems to think wealthy people who spend a lot in elections are stupid. I mean, because they're just throwing away they're like rich guys just bombing their money away, which I get. I mean, look, the one thing I'd like to bring up is you brought up Justice Kennedy's Citizens United decision. The most dangerous Citizens United decision came from Justice Thomas, who addressed the transparency issue, and he said, in fact, that transparency was a stifling effect on speech, and therefore we should eliminate even reporting of campaign donations.
Actually, that was a near majority decision by the Supreme Court.
No, but there was
hold on a second.
was a concurrence.
I'm not talking about Clarence Thomas's decision. I'm talking about the logic and the precedent that he referenced. Was a near majority decision by the Supreme Court when it was the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, who got the Supreme Court to recognize that there was a right to keep your donors secret. Now, to Charles' point, which is
the NAACP
correct,
is not running for president.
No. We have a constitutional right
The
to raise money
NAACP is
to
not in
influence
a
the
campaign.
That's not
We're
true
talking
at all.
about democracy. We're not talking about the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, or the NAACP.
The NAACP has been involved in elections for quite some time. But to Charles' point,
disclosed, by the way.
To Charles' point, it didn't have to be, and that they won the constitutional right to not be able to do that. But to Charles' point, Hillary Clinton in 2008 well outspent Barack Obama, and yet, did it make her dumb? Did it make her supporters dumb? It is not the case that whoever gives the checks get to decide. The truth of the matter is the people get to decide.
But it's a piece of it.
No, it's a piece that you're attacking, and you're falsely attacking.
So
the history
the Koch brothers are the dumbest people in politics.
Cantor lost.
They're just tossing their money down the
Rubio lost. Jeb Bush lost. The money that you're talking about.
No, Charles, I could go through a list of 535 members of Congress right now, and virtually all of them won because they were
actually, all 535 by definition had to win. So of course, if you
but my point is what I said is
area.
Virtually all of them won because they outspent their opponents. In over 90% of elections, the person who spends, in fact, over 95% of elections, the person who spends the most money wins the election. It's a simple reality. I mean, you could say it's only one variable. I agree with Horace. Barack Obama was a brilliant campaigner, and Hillary Clinton is so-so as a campaigner. She might make a brilliant president, but as a campaigner, she couldn't take on Obama, no matter how much money she spent. And we'll see what happens with Sanders. But still, it's a piece of it.
It's been shown to be a legitimate piece of it. You should have the right to participate in the process and attempt to influence it. If the Koch brothers want to, they should have every right, the same right that George Soros, which, by the way, does the lion's share of his political influencing as dark money.
The issue is not should you have the right. The issue is currently the way we are set up, we have an imbalance of speech, and that's the problem. The Koch brothers can buy more speech. That is the precedent the Supreme Court set up. I find that problematic. I think Thom finds that problematic. I think most of the American people actually find that problematic, but Republicans like it.
In a republic ruled by the rule of law and the Constitution,
and the rich,
those who have assets have the right to use those assets. If you have a car, it is easier to get to the vote than if you don't have a car. That doesn't mean that we need to balance it out, as you progressives say.
So if you're rich enough, you get to own me?
So should rich people get more votes?
So
if you're
in
wealthy
power
enough, you should have the ability to participate in the conversation, like
More.
by supporting groups.
within the boundaries of what's legal. And that's, you know, that's not what we're debating right now because it is legal, but the point that Ari and I are making is that it shouldn't be legal.
Well, actually, let me point something
think
out.
it would be
Let me actually
the
point
point
something
that
out.
you made
Wait,
was that
time
only
out.
if it is legal. That was the opposite of
problem
it.
is
the point.
actually, if you read the actual law and the regs from the IRS, which in this is a regulation set written in the 1950s that actually
During the 501c4 rules.
right, that substantially differ from actually what the law actually intended and says. You have a setup that actually shouldn't be legal for these 501c4s. Frankly, I'm going to say this, and this has nothing to do with partisanship. This is an across-the-board statement. The rules for 501c3s, 501c4s, and how the entire all 27 versions of 501cs actually, because I think it's 27 now, versions of 501cs actually need to be rewritten because they are actually insane.
Look,
Yeah.
the money issues that we're
Agreed.
talking about should be the fact that unions can force people to spend money on elections.
No,
that
they
they're
can't.
talking about.
No, they can't.
That's the
Yeah.
that's
No,
the
no, they
decision
can't.
that just
Absolutely,
came out.
that's the case that
No,
just came down.
they can't. They can force people to pay for the cost of collective bargaining. They have to give people an opt-out, all unions all across the United States, if they don't want their money spent on politics.
Sure, they're not spending the
there's a
money on
complete
those
firewall there.
lawyers across the way. Money's fungible. We all
Yes,
know that those fees
absolutely.
is going to move over. That's the dark money that's the problem here. Forcing people to support
Great try
politicians
to
they don't
change
want
the
to.
subject, Charles.
That's not even a try. That's the dark money that we should be talking about. That is forced money into somebody else's pocket. That is a lot worse than the Koch brothers trying
A,
to
it's
save
not
their
forced.
business.
B, it's not into somebody
fundamentally-
else's pocket. And B, and C, what we're talking about here is should billionaires be able to buy elections
Forced.
invisibly? Invisibly. If the AFL-CIO
Fundamentally-
makes a contribution, they make it
fundamentally, the
visibly.
Constitution does not allow you to say that once you reach a certain level of income threshold, you forfeit the freedom to participate in political discourse. If you want to give to the NAACP,
What an incredible straw man.
Yes. Forfeit. Wow, that's straw man
because
is
if
sitting
you want
over
to
there.
give to the NAACP, and it turns
Horace,
out
you
they
are the
have,
master of the
if
straw man
it turns
argument.
out they have only one donor, they're entitled to participate and promote their interests, and that's what the Supreme Court said.
Again, they don't run for president. They don't run for the Senate. They don't run for the House. We're talking about candidates for
The
political
Supreme
election. We're
NAACP
talking about a
Legal Defense
democracy.
Fund actually used to be a very, very influential PAC in the contribution process. And the point of the matter
And
is
they don't
using your
run for political office.
no, and neither did these people that were supporting Rubio. They weren't running for office.
But they were giving
were
money
not running.
secretly.
No, they were not giving money secretly.
They are absolutely
were
secretly.
participating in
Rubio
a
will
public
not
conversation.
reveal who those people are.
He can't reveal it because he doesn't know.
The people who run the
cannot reveal it.
501c4 will not reveal
And that's
who
their
gave that
right
money.
because they're not running for office.
But see,
just as you said,
you know,
they're not
501c4s,
running for
the whole
office.
501c category, as Ari was saying, was designed for schools and hospitals and churches. It wasn't designed to be a front
Okay, so by your
for
definition,
campaigns.
though, they're not running for office. So why then should they have to do it? Because this is your
Have to do what?
definition. You were opposed to you supported the NAACP because they weren't running for office.
And
I'm
these are
saying if you are
501c4s.
using dark...
First off,
No, you
these groups are
attacked-
supposed- these groups are
We've got to
supposed-
wrap this up. More of tonight's Big Picture Rumble after the break.